Today I'm going to show you how to build one of these great looking flags out of a single board. We're going to play with a little bit of fire and add a charred look to the flag. I'm also going to show you how to hand carve the stars into the Union. And finally I'm going to show you how I added this Marine Corps emblem to one of the flags. Now this didn't quite go as I originally planned, but I was able to come up with a method to get this attached, and I'll show you how I did that. So with that, let's get started. So to build our flag, we're going to need a board that's 1 by 10 by 10 feet long. That's going to give us a 37-inch flag, which is pretty common, and it's going to fit most of the stencils that you can buy online for the Union. Now the first thing we're going to do is take this board over to the miter saw and cut it down into 3 boards that are 37 inches long. Now at the table saw, we'll set the fence for 1.5 inches and cut out our stripes. And now for everybody's favorite part. We're going to break out the torch and add a nice medium char to all of the pieces we cut out. Don't worry about trying to get everything perfectly even. It'll actually look better if there's a bit of variation throughout the flag. Don't forget to get the ends as well. I like to make these a little darker than the rest of the flag. So now that everything's nice and toasty, just putting these on the bench and putting them together and getting a good look at it, see what kind of layout I like. I put a straight edge over here on the left-hand side just to keep everything aligned. And right now I'm just looking for any kind of patterns that I like or don't like. Give you an example, like right now, there's a bunch of knots right here all together. So I want to spread that out so it's not all in one area. So I'll just move a few of these around just to spread that out a little bit. Like right here, we've got 2 boards that have a very similar grain pattern. Looks like these might have even been cut from the same board. So just want to move these apart and spread this out as well. Another thing to look for, since this left-hand corner is going to be very busy with all of the stars for the Union, you want to try to avoid any big knots or anything in this area. Try to keep this pretty clear and keep the knots and any wild grain patterns over in the rest of the flag. All right, so now I'm going to measure over 14 3/4, which is the size of the Union, and make a mark. Now with everything tied up against the straight edge, I'm going to count down 7 stripes and mark for the Union. All right, now I'm going to start from the bottom and take every other stripe and move it to the side, and these are the ones that will get stained with the red. All right, now a neat trick that I picked up to keep your stain from bleeding over across your Union is to take these little razor blades, put it right on your line, and just hammer it in place. All right, I'm using a Minwax water-based stain for this. This is in crimson, and I'm just putting it on with a foam brush. Since I want the wood grain to show through clearly on these flags, I'm just going to apply 1 coat of stain. If you're wanting more vibrant colors, you can either use multiple coats of stain, or you can switch to a paint instead of a stain. However, using paint, you're not going to see the wood grain coming through. And we come back and do the same with the blue for the Union. All right, so now that the stain has had a few hours to dry, I'm going to reassemble everything in the clamps, get one last look, make sure everything is oriented correctly before I glue it up. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to each of the stripes. I don't want to use too much because I don't want to have to deal with a lot of squeeze out, just enough to hold everything together. The rubber ink roller is really handy for spreading the glue on panel glue ups. But of course, you can always just use your finger. Alright, and using a piece of scrap to hold everything down flat, I'm going to close up the clamps. Don't need a lot of pressure here, just enough to close everything up. If you've got a little bit of glue squeeze out, just take a damp rag and wipe it away. If you don't get it all, that's fine. This glue will dry clear, so you shouldn't see it. We'll just get anything that is seeped out. All right, we're at a couple of more clamps from the other side, just to make sure everything stays good and flat. All right, now it's time to do the stars. I have my stencil in place. Now you can get one of these on Amazon or Etsy. If you have a Cricut, you can print one out yourself. With this taped down, I'm just going to use a Dremel. This is a little handheld stylus type Dremel that I use. It has a 105 bit in it. It's very tiny little ball bit. If I can get it to focus there. Right now we're just doing the outline of the stars, and we'll come back with a larger bit to finish them off. All right, now that I've got the outline of all the stars done, I've switched over to a larger bit. This is the 107, and I'm going to use this to fill in the rest of the stars. All right, I think you guys get the idea. I'm not going to make you watch all 50 of them, so we'll turn the camera off, turn on some tunes, and get through the rest of these. And there's number 2. I'll tell you what, doing one flag's not too bad. 2 in a row, I got to go ice my hand down. All right, now since we exposed fresh wood when we carved out the stars, I'm going over it with this really small torch, just adding a little bit of color back to the stars. You don't want to use the big torch here because you're going to discolor the stain on the union, so I'm just a little small butane torch or lighter. The ones that you use for cooking or something like that would work really good, or if you got a cigarette lighter that has a nice small blue flame, that'll work great too. You just want to do a light touch and just add just a little color back, being very careful not to burn any of the blue stain. All right, so I've run into a bit of a problem. On my second flag, I was planning on mounting this Marine Corps emblem that I picked up at the local Hobby Lobby. What I was going to do was route a recess into the flag to be able to put this in place and glue it to the recess. However, when I set up my circle cutting jig and did a test cut, I realized that this is not at all round. It's out of round by a good bit, actually almost a 1/4 inch. So that's not going to work. So in order to get this to fit using the circle cutting jig, I'd have to make the recess a lot bigger than the actual seal. And then we're going to have a pretty wide gap on the sides just so that it's big enough for the top and bottom to fit in. And that's not ideal. Try to avoid that if I can. So the next idea I had was just to try and route it out by hand without a circle cutting jig, just to see if I could do that. I didn't have high hopes for it, and I really didn't like the way that was coming out. Started routing it out following a line that I drew around the seal, and then started taking away some of the waste in the middle, but I stopped just to see how this was going to work. And I can still see little gouges and imperfections around the outside of the seal, and I just don't want that in the flag that I'm making. I want it to be clean and crisp. I don't want to see those jagged edges from an inconsistent circle around the outside. So back to the drawing board. So I guess if there's anything good that come from this, it's that I found out this issue now instead of after I had routed out a big circle in my flag that I just spent all this time making. Alright, since plan A and plan B have both failed, I'm going with plan C to get this mounted. So I've got some construction adhesive. I'm going to rough up the back of this plaque a bit so it's got something, hopefully it'll grab onto a little bit better than just a flat surface back here. And I'm just going to use that to glue it in place. It's not quite what I was going for, but it should work out and give me the nice clean line all the way around without any jagged edges. It'll just be sitting up just a little higher than I had planned, but other than that, should work out just fine. I used some 80 grit sandpaper to rough up the back and took a dull chisel and just kind of scratched up and added some gouges as well to give the adhesive something to really hold on to. I'm just using a general construction adhesive here. Since it's not flat, I'm going to add a good bit of the construction adhesive to make sure that it has a good bond. For the finish, I'm going to use spray can lacquer. This is a clear satin Minwax lacquer. I'm going to do one coat on the back. I'm going to flip it over after it dries and do 2 coats, maybe 3 coats on the front. We'll see how it goes. That should be plenty. This isn't a tabletop or anything. It doesn't need a real thick coat of finish, just something to offer it a little bit of protection. Once the finish is dry, it's time to hang the flag. There are plenty of options for hanging these. I'm using an aluminum French cleat designed for heavy artwork.